The FBI has released a long secret document from its investigation into possible connections between the 9/11 hijackers and the government of Saudi Arabia. It comes as the nation marked the 20th anniversary at Ground Zero here in New York, at the Pentagon just outside Washington, at the Flight 93 National Memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and at countless events across the country and beyond. ABC's Trevor Ault on what that FBI document revealed.
Tonight, as countless American families remember their loved ones lost in the September 11th attacks, President Biden honoring their request to declassify and disclose new documents. While heavily redacted, they reveal details of the investigation into Saudi nationals in the U.S. who helped some of the 9/11 hijackers, though they make no conclusion as to whether Saudi Arabia's government was involved. These 16 pages are the first to be released since the president announced last week he'd begin doing so. Hundreds of affected families and survivors had told Biden if he didn't start that process, he wouldn't be welcome at Saturday's memorial.
These memorials are really important, but they're also incredibly difficult for the people who are affected by it.
This weekend, America renewing its resolve to never forget the sacrifices and heroism that day 20 years ago, nor the thousands of lives lost.
My memory goes back to that terrible day, but it was also a time when many people acted above and beyond the ordinary.
Across the country, symbolic tributes to those brave actions. Firefighters climbing 110 floors on these Kansas City steps, this staircase in Orlando, in this gym in New Jersey.
The cadets who are taking the field with 3 first responders.
At West Point, every Army football player taking the field with an American flag. And notably, former President Bush praising the American spirit, but invoking the ongoing threat of terrorism, both foreign and domestic.
There is little cultural overlap between violent extremists abroad and violent extremists at home. They are children of the same foul spirit, and it is our continuing duty to confront them.
Double honors unto the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, as salutations to the hopeful elect. Shalom, Yasharallah. You know, I wasn't going to go near this subject pursuant to this being the 20th anniversary because, at least in my eyes, it has been overdone. But the truth is, some of y'all still believe in the Bin Laden, Iraq, Saddam Hussein, weapons of mass destruction, next up Afghanistan narrative, and the continuous spin of implicating the Saudis year after year since the 2001 attack, yet never seeming to do anything about it. The fact is, it has long been proven your own government spearheaded the bringing down of the towers, and the fact that Israeli quote-unquote students were in the building the very night before is more than enough for any thinking man to see that whatever they've been trying to sell you throughout the years concerning who did what with who just doesn't add up. Did I mention wherever there is Saudi smoke, there most certainly is Israeli fire? Forget all that though for a second. Let's talk motive. Of course, it comes down to Esau, Edom, i.e. the elite globalists, the international bankers, and their quest for global dominance and control. Of course, that control consists of freeing you from your civil and social liberties for your own protection if you let the powers that shouldn't be tell it. But what continues to be overlooked is the spiritual aspect of things. Considering the only answer to life's woes is the scriptures, and the only thing that makes sense at this point is the Lord's return. Let's start there. This is Psalm 64 and 8, and it reads, "So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away." Never mind the BBC reported demolition of WTC Tower number 7, 26 minutes before it actually happened. But what about then President George Bush admitting to seeing the first plane crash on television when footage of the first plane's aerial strike hadn't surfaced until the following day? How's that for the ultimate Freudian slip? So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. Or how about Larry Silverstein, if you're nasty, and obvious Amalekite, Amalek being the chief house of Edom, Larry Silverstein, who months before 9/11 bought the World Trade Center's lease, then took out an insurance plan that covered, wait for it, terrorism. God damn it. Incidentally, he ended up taking the insurance company to court because he thought he should be paid double based on there were 2 attacks. He won that suit and walked out of court with a judgment for, I believe, $4.5 billion. If you believe in coincidences, then those tidbits of occurrences may say nothing to you. But you know what? Let's get this script. This is Micah 2:1. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it, because it is in the power of their hand. How many of you have heard Monsieur Silverstein's explanation for how WTC Tower 7 came down? Pull it, he said. And how about why he didn't show up to work that morning? A dermatologist appointment. I bet. Ecclesiasticus, otherwise known as Sirach 19 and 26 in the Apocrypha, says this: There is a wicked man that hangeth down his head sadly, but inwardly he is full of deceit, casting down his countenance and making it as if he heard not, where he is not known. He will do thee a mischief before thou be aware. The truth of the matter is, only Esau alone was capable of carrying out that type of domestic attack. Did he solicit help? Of course he did. The Israelis, the Saudis, who he pretends to separate himself from, they're all from his own house. But it is he that sits in the power seat of America, aka Babylon the Great, that is able enough to devise the same deception that basically changed the whole world and prepped it for what we are bearing witness to now, a new world order. Important to point out is that very same deception, the one that has the world transfixed today with the Crown Victoria 19er, is the same foul spirit of witchcraft. 9/11 was nothing more than a ritual sacrifice based on infighting amongst the so-called elite, and this is nothing new concerning how Esau attempts to harness power by carrying spiritual wickedness at the highest levels of government and rulership. This is Numbers 29 and 2 in the Douay Reims Bible. The Bible's name is taken from the 2 cities in northern France where the translation was first published. The New Testament was published in 1582 in Reims, and the Old Testament was published in 1609 in Douay, and it reads, And you shall offer a holocaust for a most sweet odor to the Lord, 1 calf of the herd, 1 ram, and 7 lambs of a year old, without blemish. When you go to the King James Version, you see holocaust means burnt offering, ergo, a sacrifice. For those of you not in the know, Pan, Dionysus, Set, Saturn, Satan, Kronos, where we get the word chronic from, are all synonymous. In the Hebrew, Satan means adversary. In the Greek, the same. The adage is accuser. According to the Freemasons, don't take my word for it. Do your own research. The Twin Towers represent Saturn. For Masons, King Solomon's temple, which is dominant in symbol and tradition all throughout the practice of Freemasonry, is said to represent the path of development all Masons journey through. They believe the entrance of sacred and mysterious places should be guarded with 2 pillars. Solomon's temple featured the 2 towers of Boaz and Jachin. 1 Kings 7 and 21, and he set up the pillars in the porch of the temple, and he set up the right pillar and called the name thereof Jachin, and he set up the left pillar and called the name thereof Boaz. Now in the Hebrew, Jachin, the pillar on the left is said to mean firm, upright, or stable. Boaz, the pillar on the right, is said to mean power or might. Together they are said to mean he shall establish, and in it is strength. Now the display of the 2 towers was followed by the secret societies, same secret societies throughout the ages, as a show of who is in charge. In any event relevant to what we are seeing now with the great global reset, universal basic income, and talks of the new normal. You'll own nothing and love it. A lesser known fact is that Twin Towers can be found on the world's first currency from the Spanish piece of 8 coin that was used internationally to trade goods with silverback in the 1700s. The dollar sign is actually just the scroll and 2 pillars found on this first coin. Ergo, currency trading as it stands today is just Saturn worship. This is Habakkuk 2, verse 6, and it reads, "Shall not all these take up a parable against him?" The him being the Chaldeans, aka the elites of Esau Edom that deal with spirits, the Magi, the magicians that deal with witchcraft, the illuminated ones on the left-hand side of the Lord, i.e. the Illuminati. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, Woe to him that increaseth that which is not his, how long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. Now, the use of the biblical term thick clay speaks to the heavy debt and the weight of pledges incurred by the other nations at the hands of America and the world over, i.e. the global deficit by the international banking elite families, starting with the Rothschilds, the Oppenheimers, and of course the Rockefellers. It is pretty clear that this so-called pandemic was a creation of the global elites to destroy what is left of the petrodollar and debt currency so that they could institute a digital economic system leading to the implementation of the RFID microchip, which we know to be the MOTB, the mark of the beast, an obvious ode to that same satanic worship first instituted by the same secret societies. Now, I found this excerpt from a paper on the subject I downloaded some years ago when they weren't scrubbing anything worthy of taking off from the internet. Listen to this and we'll get some more script and close out. I didn't intend for this lesson to be long. And it says this, precisely 11 years before the infamous attacks on the World Trade Center, President Bush Sr. announced the birth of the New World Order. 11 years later, President Bush Jr. sat inside a classroom while the towers came crashing down. The number 11 represents the 2 towers, and Kabbalists, Salakia, associate 11 with all that is evil, sinful, and imperfect. The reason why 11 has an evil reputation is it follows after the perfect number 10, as in the 10 Commandments. Black magician Aleister Crowley stated, "My number is 11, as all their numbers who are of us. 11 is the number of death." And 11 is also another number of the Antichrist, as in Daniel's vision. The beast has 10 horns, but an 11th horn appears, which is the Antichrist. Also of importance is the number 9, which mathematicians consider a magical number because of its idiosyncrasies. Even more, Revelation 9 and 11 is the passage that reveals the name of the Antichrist. Revelation 9 and 11, "And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon." Now, we know there is no one Antichrist. Abaddon and Apollyon both means destruction. This ties into the nation of Esau, Edom, and his blessing being the sword pursuant to Revelation 6 and 4 and 2 Thessalonians 2 and 3. Perdition meaning destruction. The modern day sword is the gun, of course the ICBM, the missiles, and the hypodermic needle. All instruments of death, violence, and warfare. Now, back to the article here. Now, during the terrorist attacks, George Bush was reading a book called The Pet Goat to school children. This is an allusion to allusion to the god Pan, the goat of Mendes, or what the Knights Templar called the Baphomet. Even more, the school was in Sarasota, which is nicknamed Paradise. Let me just add, for those of you not in the know, seconds before then President Bush was told America was under attack, the grade 2 children in the class of the Sarasota school he was visiting were in the middle of reciting the words kite, hit, steal, plane, must as part of their lesson plan. I mean, You cannot make this stuff up. Thus, George Bush, as the American pharaoh, sits in the devil's paradise while people burn to death in the towers. And believe it or not, the two towers had massive trident imagery, which is connected to the Hindu god Shiva and fire. Hey, Kamala. The first plane that hits the North Tower is called American Airlines Flight 11 or AA-11 or AA-11. This is a reference to Aleister Crowley's occult order of the Silver Star called Argentinium Astrum or AA. The Silver Star is Sirius, which happens to be the name of the police dog, the only animal killed in the attack on the Twin Towers. And of course, Sirius, the brightest star, is known as the Dog Star. And it so happens that 9/11 is the beginning of the Egyptian New Year, which is marked by the first dawn rising of Sirius. In the Masonic Lodge, Sirius is considered the abode of Lucifer. Thus, the deity invoked on 9/11 was Lucifer, where the Illuminati gets its name, Lucifer meaning light bearer. And let's not forget the demonic smoke picturesque that floated out of that tower after the plane made its impact. Even the doomsday plane circling above DC on September 11th was called Venus 77, a planet and goddess associated with Lucifer. And if that wasn't enough, you have America's satanic mistress, the Statue of Liberty, watching the entire event. Now, let's close with this, because through all these rituals and his mysterious works, his plotting and thieving, Esau and the nation of Edom are through. I mean, we are seeing his kingdom and the rulership of it crumble before our very eyes. So let's go to Isaiah 19. Let's start at verse 11, and it says this. Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vials, the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. Thy vials, speaking to the songs of Babylon's coveted democracy and foreign diplomacy and his petrodollar for a matter. The phone had to chime on that. Shalom to Elder Apostle Gabar and his petrodollar for that matter, because capitalism is America's #1 religion. I don't care what none of y'all say. It ain't the Pope, it ain't the pastor, it's the paper. And truth be told, no nation is buying it. America is corroded. Its foundation, its rulership, and its very infrastructure gone through. The worm represents corrosion. Verse 12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, i.e. Esau Edom, this satanic elite, not the spiritual demon Satan, but his physical representation here on earth. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations through his democracy and his foreign diplomacy? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of the heavenly Father. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Indians, we Israelites, we are those stars. And this verse here is actually twofold. And it speaks to his space travel and trying to set up his space stations. I will sit also upon the Mount of the Congregation. The Mount of the Congregation is we Hebrew Israelites assembled here in the Americas, in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. As I said, that speaks to Esau building his space stations and his space travel. This is how they keep track of you, by the way. The prince of the power of air using the internet. He will hope to track you with the RFID microchip. Verse 15, let's keep going. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit, meaning America will lose its esteem and all its gloss, its glory. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man? Proving Lucifer is Esau Edom and not the spiritual demon Satan, that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners, speaking to the millions of Israel locked away due to the workings of his prison industrial complex. All the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in glory, every one in his own house. But thou art cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch, and as the raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with a sword. And that sword is will be the missiles that go down to the stones of the pit as a carcass trodden under feet. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land and slain thy people. The seed of the evildoers shall never be renowned. Call halal Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai Ba'Shem Rakakwadash to the power and spirit. I hope you are edified. Double honors unto the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who teach us 100% truth and rule well. Salutations to the hopeful elect. Remember, no test, no jab. Damn sure, don't take that chip. Shalom, Yasharallah.
Yes, kite. Get ready to read this word the fast way. Get ready. Kid. Yes. Sound it out. Get ready. Kid. Sound it out. Get ready. Kid. What word? Kid. Yes. Kid.